Learning about learning with Jim.
Beautiful new opening music there from Ellie Westbrook. Thanks very much, Ellie, for that. Welcome everyone to Learning About Learning with Jim, episode 5. I'm Jim, and every week I research a different topic focused around learning and then share my research with you folks on this lovely little stream. Episode 5 today is all about learning in the metaverse, and this is my question: overhyped nonsense or the actual future of learning? That's what I've been looking into. And to be honest, Ian's here. Hi, Ian. Ian Palmer says hi, Jim. My colleague from Pearson back in the day. Doing a lot of stuff around VR, I think, or they certainly were in the kind of training side of things. If you're watching, please drop comments relating to anything I'm saying. Jump into the conversation, and I can bring those up. Unfortunately, the research doesn't look great for learning and the kind of metaverse learning in VR. Max is here too. Hey, Max, calling in from Sweden. Yeah. So today we're going to look at a couple of things. We're going to look at Meta, formerly Facebook's kind of shiny vision of the future of learning. We're going to look at some academic research showing that VR might actually not be very useful for learning. But then I'm going to end with some ideas for how we might use it in the future. Obviously, it's still kind of, certainly in this iteration, still quite a new technology. Although I do remember as a kid going to a science museum and putting on a very old VR headset and feeling like I was in Tron, and that was pretty exciting. But I guess things have developed somewhat since then. But how useful are those developments for learning? Metaverse, as I think probably if you've been reading some stuff about this lately, the original term comes from a novel called Snow Crash that I've been reading, and the metaverse in that novel kind of began as this like hackers space where they were kind of claiming this online world, and it increasingly became dominated by a Mark Zuckerberg style mega CEO who kind of controls all the connections, and the hackers are still in there trying to it is a great book, Ian. Absolutely. The hackers are there trying to kind of wrest control back. But I think it's interesting considering what's kind of currently happening with the metaverse, with people like Mark Zuckerberg muscling in, and Microsoft recently just bought a gaming company, their kind of play for the metaverse. But let's have a look at how Meta thinks learning will work in the metaverse. So I've got their little kind of promo video here that I'm going to show you. Learning in the metaverse. No sound. That is definitely my problem. All right, I'll just narrate this. You've got immersive. The lady's there with her kid, and they're having a look at the stars, and then this person's walking through a kind of beautifully rendered version of some kind of Roman town. It also interesting. Apparently, Mark Zuckerberg is absolutely obsessed with the Romans, and he's even got that kind of Roman emperor haircut, hasn't he? So, well, sorry about the lack of sound there, but I mean that looks very cool. Could be amazing. Obviously, very focused on kind of kids and learning from Meta there. But how might this actually this actually work? They also talk about work in the metaverse, and I'm imagining this doesn't have any sound either. And you can see kind of work in the metaverse. This guy is going, he's off to work in his absolutely beautiful house, of course, pops his little glasses on, and then he's in there. He's in the metaverse. He's chatting with people. He's working, raises his coffee cup. And, you know, he's got all these schematics. He sets up some meetings. Very cool. But I think what's interesting with all these videos is that they kind of show a lot of talking, a lot of presenting, a lot of looking at things, a lot of chatting, a lot of meetings. But, you know, my question is, where did he actually make that schematic? Imagine how much your arms would ache at the end of a day having to kind of hold them up, creating things in this way. So, I mean, it's potentially amazing, but we should be wary, of course, of promotional videos of this kind, because obviously this isn't actual footage from inside the metaverse. It's just a concept. There is, of course, existing stuff out there, like the Oculus Store. If you look, there's quite a lot of educational stuff on there already, so you can like immerse yourself in these worlds and learn about kind of space or forests or climate change, things like that. So lots of kind of kid focused stuff. And I don't know if you remember, like early pandemic, people were talking about having meetings in the video game Red Dead Redemption instead of Zoom, when all that kind of Zoom fatigue was setting in. People were, it's kind of a cowboy themed computer game. People were sitting around campfires, drinking digital coffee. Kind of playful, but potentially not that interesting and useful for learning. So, as always with this little show, I've dug into the academic research. So, what does the research say about metaverse, VR, AR for learning, and how that can actually be useful for us? There is quite a bit of research on this, and it kind of splits into all the technologies that people research kind of split into kind of two categories. You've got your kind of Second Life style, which some of you remember, like one of the early kind of metaversey games. So some people have done work on that, and then there's kind of AR overlaying things into the real world. Ian's got a comment from Ian. Much of the value of the physical workplace and education are impromptu and unplanned interactions around the coffee machine, hard to create in the metaverse in the near future. And I think, yeah, totally agree. And that final point, in the near future, is the key point here. It feels like we've got a long way to go with this technology before, you know, what I do is walk into my office, put my glasses on, and I'm straight in. It still feels kind of quite a long way from that. Not to mention the implications of costs of these headsets and connectivity challenges as well. So the first piece of research, they were actually using Second Life as a space for problem solving, and this is kind of the space where they were hanging out. This is Second Life. They gathered a bunch of people in there and gave them some problem solving tasks. And what was quite interesting with this paper, the participants actually said, whilst it was kind of fun, it enhanced group interactions and motivations. It was kind of nice to see people's avatars there. Actually, because of the accessibility issues and usability issues with kind of sharing documents, working on documents together, they ended up just using alternative technologies like Google Docs, WhatsApp, to communicate, because they found it much harder to actually collaborate. And and also very distracting. They said some of the participants stated that some group members were distracted because they tried to create extraordinary avatars to fly and chat with other people. So, you know, Zoom virtual backgrounds are distracting enough, let alone your colleagues or fellow learners trying to fly around and go and meet people in this open world. Max saying they're starting to explore it quite a lot in Helsingborg with their education department, 20,000 teachers and students. Yeah, super interesting. And saying that AR seems to be of more use so far than VR as a way for young people to engage in all kinds of things, such as designing their own playgrounds, rather than adults doing it for them. Yeah, really interesting. And I mean, I suppose AR, because it's a simpler technology, is kind of that ability to create within it is moving much faster. And actually, our second piece of research looked at AR, like teachers using AR for constructivist learning, and what they discovered was that it was incredibly useful. They were using AR to they kind of tagged objects around the school and added metadata to them, so kids could go around the school and learn about things, kind of get videos up, pictures up, text up, but that the using this technology required a degree of experience that the teachers did not have. So there's a barrier to implementing this stuff currently in classrooms, where certainly in the UK, a lot of teachers, as far as I understand, it's very kind of PowerPoint point driven, and still kind of a lot of worksheets people using. So I think I've got that quote up here. And yeah, and the main challenge, which is interesting, kind of your point, Max, saying that kids are able to design their own playgrounds, because one of the challenges is that with AR, the learning is focused on the learning process is strongly focused on the learner being the consumer, not the designer of the AR experience. So I think that kind of speaks to your point that, like, if we can get kids actually making stuff with these tools, or adults indeed, that increases the potential for this as a real kind of constructivist doing learning tool, rather than just viewing things and looking at them. Ian agrees with Max, and Max saying, we've also heard some positive things about VR for language learning, a big challenge for those who move to Sweden, that people learn faster with VR than without. Really interesting. I think there was some research on language learning that I didn't pull out for this, but I can maybe if I pick up this topic another day, I can have a look into that. There was another paper on how VR enhances learning outcomes. Interesting point that came out from that is that VR technology does not... Have I got this quote? Here we go. VR technology itself does not have any influence on cognitive benefits. Cognitive benefits are caused by the instructional method embedded in the media presentation. For instance, the learning content and instructional strategy. It's an appropriate set of learning tasks that's deemed useful and easy to use by the learners that's crucial. I kind of wrote my master's thesis on a similar topic. I was looking at technology and creativity in primary education. And the conclusion I came to was there was all this investment in technology, kind of iPads, interactive whiteboards, cameras, things like that. But the crucial thing was the pedagogy that you use that sits around those tools, that it's never about the tech, it's about the pedagogy, it's about how you use that tech to teach. As we heard last week in kind of audio for learning, you can do great learning just kind of over radio if what you focus on is the learning experience. So it's pedagogy first and then tools later. And I think that's always a challenge with a new shiny technology, backed by Facebook and all these tech companies who really want to push it for their kind of profit motive. But as learning designers, as teachers, as lecturers, whatever, we need to think about the pedagogy, why we're using it, how can it enhance the learning experience before we actually kind of start using it. I've got another comment. They haven't got to testing it so much yet. Great, nice. There's so much buzz around this at the moment. There's going to be so much testing and doing over the next kind of decade. The final paper I looked at was entitled "VR Headsets for Learning About Kind of Fluid Dynamics." So they got this immersive VR tool where students they're kind of experiencing how liquid flows through different media and tubes and things like that. They got feedback in real time with touch and sound. They looked at fluid flowing through different things like blood vessels. So all sorts of different applications for, I guess, engineering, medical professionals. And they split the group into two. So one group got to use this VR tool, and then the other group, which seems a little bit unfair, the non-immersive group was shown a PowerPoint which explained the controls of the VR experience, and then they were shown an 8.5-minute screen capture of the VR experience. So, I mean, at first glance, not a very engaging experience for those people who were just watching the video. Seems like you'd get much more learning from being able to interact with this thing, actually kind of playing with it, getting real-time feedback from it. But what was interesting was that actually when it comes to kind of the learning, kind of reaching the learning outcomes, there wasn't really much of a difference between those who just watched the video of someone doing VR compared to someone who actually used the VR. And I think what they kind of posit here was that maybe the cognitive load that it took for people to figure out the controls, use a technology they'd not used before, actually meant that they ended up learning about the same as someone who wasn't immersed in this environment. They engaged a bit less with the material because there was this kind of technological barrier to engaging with it. So I suppose, down the line when learners are used to VR and AR applications, sorry if you're still posting comments. I actually can't see any more that are coming up, unfortunately. But it looks like things are coming in. Bloody tech. Can't even do a stream, let alone VR. But that's interesting when we think about kind of how can we reduce the cognitive load of the experience that we're taking people through to maximize learning. Like maybe tech gets in the way sometimes. So how can we support people to gain that kind of fluency with the tech so that it's a useful learning experience. So how might VR actually be useful, or Metaverse be useful for learning designers, teachers, lecturers? It seems to me that this kind of immersing yourself in a different world is a clear application, kind of like we saw in the video, walking around a Roman town, kind of flying through the stars, experiencing what it's like to kind of be in a jungle. Max's language learning example, where perhaps you're in a room with someone speaking that language, you're getting the kind of empathy, you're seeing their mouth move, you're getting real-time feedback. I think that kind of immersive aspect of things seems like a kind of easy win for VR. Obviously, kind of connecting with people, connecting people across the world as long as they've got that connection. And Max saying, the benefits for disadvantaged young people using VR to experience a place they might never visit. Absolutely, I find it. It's my partner worked at a school here. I live right on the coast in the south of England, and there are some kids in this town who've never been to the beach, though they live kind of 5 miles away from the beach. So, I think you hear kids in London who've never seen a cow or a horse, which maybe there's other ways that we can address that problem other than VR. But using VR to help people experience places they're never going to visit, especially in kind of pandemic times. Question: is it important if the learning is better or not if they get an experience they might not otherwise? I mean, I think that's really interesting because actually, in a couple of the papers I read, they're very academic, so they often are tracking learning outcomes, but they all say that the students experience kind of higher motivation and engagement, whether they kind of actually were able to do a test better or not seemed to kind of vary, but they were all excited about, interested in, engaged in the learning experience, which I think is kind of maybe that's your point, Max. That's kind of, maybe that's an outcome in itself, and maybe these academics or teachers they're working with can think more broadly about the outcomes that they set for their learning experience. Ian saying it's going to rely on the fidelity of it, like watching poor quality video. A lo-fi experience like Second Life will be disappointing and a turn off. And I think, yeah, I mean, that's exactly kind of, that's the challenge here. So where it's kind of overhyped, I think it's the tech isn't quite there yet to create that fully immersive experience that Ian's talking about. You know, VR headsets haven't quite reached the retina display quality that you have on like an iPhone, where you can't even see the pixels. It's such high res. At the moment, they still kind of look like you're inside a crappy video game. So I think the kind of, is it overhyped? I think it's not, the tech's not quite there yet. And also it shouldn't be about the tech for us, for people who create learning programs, learning experience. We should think about the pedagogy. There's barriers to engaging. So cost of the technology, cost of the headsets, the connection, you know, obviously you need a very fast connection if you're going to be doing online metaverse stuff. And then a big question, I suppose, there's a great Guardian article that I read that's kind of fairly anti-metaverse about what if the metaverse ends up replicating all the bad things in the world as well as the good ones. It's very easy for these companies, big tech companies, to promote a kind of utopian view of these things because they've kind of bet the farm on the metaverse. But like in Snow Crash, what if the metaverse ends up being a kind of scary place? And I've got a fairly chunky quote from that article here where she says, "The dream is a virtual place where the hierarchies and limitations of the real world fall away, where the nerdy dweeb can be the hero, where the impoverished and bored can get away from their reality and live somewhere more exciting, more rewarding. Anyone who's marginalized in the real world, though, knows that this is not how things go down. Virtual worlds are not inherently any better than the real one. Worker exploitation exists in them. Look at World of Warcraft, in which Venezuelans farm currency to sell to first world players, or Roblox, in which young game developers have put in long hours on unregulated projects for little reward. Misogyny and homophobia exist in them too. Ask anyone who's had the misfortune to sound female on voice chat while playing a multiplayer shooter. As for racism, it's alive and well and seemingly emboldened in the digital world." So she's kind of worried about, what if we create these amazing online worlds, are we just going to end up bringing in all the horrible stuff from the real world? So I think kind of a word of warning there as we kind of career headlong into creating stuff in the metaverse. That's all for today. 23 minutes, kind of bang on time. Thanks for your comments, Max and Ian, and anyone kind of watching the replay, drop some comments in here as well. I'll put some comments with all the links to the papers I've read and the articles I've read for this week. But yeah, maybe I'll pick up with, maybe when you've done some more work on in Helsingborg, Max, we can come and have a chat about that and how it's working. Be really interested to see kind of real world applications of metaverse stuff. Final comment from Ian. Yeah, who will be the gatekeepers? Exactly. Who are the gatekeepers to this thing? If they're, we've seen, I think, over the last couple of years, a lot of pushback on social media and the kind of the effects that's having on society. Like the potential is kind of terrifying, right? And also exciting. But hey, we'll see what happens. Thanks so much for joining, folks. See you next week for the next topic.